Hi, if you've ever read the Aiken Standard, you've probably seen the name Rob Novitt at least 2 times in every issue. Who is Rob Novitt? Well, let me just show you a little bit into where the magic happens for this literary genius. This is the desk of my guest today, Mr. Rob Novitt. There is a method to the madness, and actually that's quite more organized than it usually is. But there is definitely a method to his madness, so to speak. And I am just ready and excited to hear what this gentleman has to say about public education. Rob Novitt has been covering education for a number of years, and he's been a writer for over 40 years. I haven't done anything consistently for 10 years, let alone 40. So don't change that dial. Up next, Rob Novitt, as we discuss public education from a writer's perspective. Don't change that dial. Welcome inside of the broadcast. My name is Donna Moore Westby, your host of Education Matters, where we're connecting you to the world of education one step at a time. I am so looking forward to today's broadcast. I've been thinking about it now for over a month. I have great respect and admiration for the gentleman we will talk to today inside of the broadcast. I think you're going to enjoy it as well. But of course, we must thank the sponsors of Education Matters. Couldn't do it without you. And they are Will Lou Gray. I made sure to write them all down this time. Will Lou Gray Opportunity School out of West Columbia. Bryant Insurance Agency right here in Aiken, South Carolina. And also Westby's Products and Services, creator of Dawn Seasoning Delight All-Purpose Seasoning and Marinade. Thanks to my corporate sponsors for helping us to bring programs to you every week. And then I'd like to recognize those individuals I call friends of Education Matters, and they are Isaac and Betty Rucker here of Aiken, South Carolina, my wonderful parents. Willie and Cynthia Wright, also of Aiken, thank you very much. And Leroy and Teresa Myrick, all of Aiken, South Carolina. Thanks so much to all of you. And I know you're watching, and it is our prayer that more of you will support those sponsors and also support Education Matters. All right, I'm moving right along. I've got a couple of reminders to share with you. This week's chalkboard reminder: Education Matters airs daily right here on ASTV 4 times a day. And you may not have realized that, but we are on the air 4 times a day right here on ASTV at 7 a.m. So as you're getting up to prepare for work or prepare for school, turn on Channel 95. Also at 1 p.m. If you go home for lunch, you can tune in then. At 4 p.m., as you're just getting home from school or work, and then at 11 p.m. Let us be your nightcap, all right? Full of quality programs, information that you can certainly put to use. That is this week's reminder inside of Education Matters. All right, we're now moving into the Education Matters tip of the week. Every week inside of the broadcast, I do provide you with a brand new tip. A lot of times these are just things that I'm thinking about in my own home, maybe lessons I've learned from others, and I want to share them with you. So this week's tip of the week, here it goes. Many high school seniors will travel out of town for senior week activities. Make sure seniors write down emergency contact phone numbers in case something happens to their cell phones. Now, you might ask, why in the world would you come up with a tip like that? Well, just think about yourself. If I were to ask you to call someone, maybe you call pretty frequently, maybe it's once or twice a month, without your cell phone, would you be able to remember their phone numbers? Probably not. We've all gotten so used to that technology that we don't even try to remember numbers anymore. if your child gets into an emergency situation while they're out of town, they may not actually remember the different phone numbers. So tell them to write down some of those key phone numbers, have it in their wallet or something like that so that they can have access to those numbers in case of an emergency. All right? Hopefully you'll put that tip to use. Okay. Rob Novitt, do you know what that sound means?
I think we're ready to start.
Almost. That's a good guess. That sound means it's Word of the Week time inside of the broadcast every week here on the television program as well as my radio broadcast. I do give you a brand new Word of the Week so that we can all learn and grow together. And this summer, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little heads up. One of my upcoming tips of the week will have to do with keeping your children's minds engaged during the summer. A great way to do that is going on my website, edmat.com, and having your children go back and learn the words of the week, okay? You can do that during the summer to keep their minds engaged. You can do crossword puzzles with them, just again, keeping their minds active during the summer. This week's word of the week is facade. Facade, okay? It's a French word, and so normally there's a little accent underneath the C. Facade, F-A-C-A-D-E, and it is a noun, and it means the face or front part of anything. Also, especially an artificial or false front. And of course, with what I experienced and witnessed at the adult education graduation on last evening, I was inspired with this particular sentence. The father tried to display an unemotional facade as his son received his diploma, but he couldn't contain his feelings for long. I wonder if I'm going to be able to contain myself as my son walks across the stage. I don't know about my facade. I'll probably be so full of emotion. But anyway, facade is this week's word of the week. Practice it, have fun with it, share it with your young people so that we may all learn and grow together. After these words from our sponsors, we'll be back and talk with a legend in his own mind. Rob Novitt, we'll be right back.
Tired of hearing automated answering services when you have questions about auto, home, renters, motorcycle, or life insurance? Call the Bryan Insurance Agency, where you will always receive a representative ready to answer your questions and provide friendly customer service just for you. Call today for a quick quote at 803-642-8505 or visit us at 909 Daughtery Road in Aiken. Takia and her staff are ready to serve you.
The Will Lou Gray Opportunity School has been serving the beautiful Midlands of South Carolina since 1921. Our mission has evolved over the years, and we now specialize in helping young people move past their obstacles in order to achieve success. We give students opportunities to lead, to develop social skills, to become active in their communities, and to taste success. Don't settle for less than the absolute best for your life. Contact us today to take the next step in your journey toward success.
When it comes to grilling, I'm the man. Using Dawn Seasoning Delight, I'm the grill master.
My seasoning is available at Kroger, Bi-Lo, Food Line, Region Harvest. Look for it on display in the meat department. Also visit seasoningdelight.com for information and recipes. Dawn Seasoning Delight. It's so good.
Dawn Seasoning Delight is so good.
Welcome back inside of the broadcast. If you're just tuning in inside of Education Matters, today I am, saluting a fellow journalist. His name is Rob Novitt. If you purchase the Aiken Standard, whether you read the newspaper each day or you go online, you're bound to see his name as author of several articles, at least twice in every paper. I don't know how he does it. And that is Mr. Rob Novitt. Welcome inside of the broadcast.
Well, it's a pleasure, Donna, to have walked the 30 feet from my desk that you managed to immortalize. I'm really grateful for that.
Well, I was quite surprised at how actually clean it was compared to just last week. Now, somewhere underneath those piles is a baby picture of me that you still owe me.
I thought I gave that back to you.
Oh,
No,
well, maybe you did.
I'll
Maybe
have
it's
to look.
underneath my pile.
it might be.
Well, anyway, viewers, let me tell you how I came to invite Mr. Rob Novitt on the broadcast. What I do is I try to prepare a couple of months in advance on the different topics. And as I looked at the month of May, I noticed that Horace Mann, who is deemed as the father of American public education, would have had a birthday on May the 4th. And as I started thinking about public education and about Mr. Mann being such an advocate of public education, I figured, he had probably seen so much over the years. It would just kind of be interesting to talk to someone who has watched and actually, in a sense, studied public education over a number of years. And I thought about you, Rob. So I'm excited to have you in the studio today, and
Thank you.
I consider it an honor and a privilege that you said yes. Well, let's start off. Tell us a little bit about you. Where did you grow up, and what was life like for you growing up? And I mean, it's on you if you want to share your age, but anyway, your stories might kind of lend itself.
I can do that. I grew up in, it's a small town called Walterboro, which is about 90 miles from Aiken, and a lot of people know it because it's the route they take to go to Edisto Beach, which I heard when I moved here about 11 years ago.
Okay.
And it was, it's really been interesting to see just how, in some respects, and maybe we can catch up on that a little bit, just how, similar they are in terms of how education and some of the the news of the last 40 years or so. But it's a much smaller community, and has a rich history, and basically a 3-block main street, which my parents ran a shoe store in when I was growing up, and basically the whole main street was kind of my playground because I would just bounce from all the store to store and all the merchants I knew, and actually when I was about 5, that's an old story. When I was 5, I actually started selling the paper. I'd buy it go with the other kids, every Wednesday afternoon. It was
The Aiken Standard?
No, this was in Walterboro.
Okay, all right.
When I was growing up.
Okay.
And, so I'd buy it for 7 cents and sell it for a dime. When 3 cents profit was a big deal back then. And
entrepreneur.
So the story was when I would go out at 5 years old to start trying to sell the paper, I had to take a babysitter along because I didn't know how to make change. So I got to first grade and finally figured all that out. So.
Of course. Now, what was life like growing up for you that eventually helped you to then understand the value of education?
I don't know. I don't know if there's an easy answer to that. I think just school is just a pretty neat place to be, and I think as I recall, I had a second grade teacher I kept up with for many years, and she actually got me into journalism.
Wow.
When she started a little newsletter, and I wrote a little story about Petey the parakeet, that was a pet that turned out to be Patricia, and so I wrote about that, and that was my first journalistic effort, I think. So.
Well, isn't that something? Well, when you wrote that first article, was there an instant attraction to the art of writing and what it could do in terms of storytelling?
Absolutely not.
Wow. Well, how did you then get?
Really, I guess I was writing. I was trying. I think in junior high, I was trying to write some fiction, and then when I got to high school, my freshman year, I had an English teacher named Letha Stroud.
And you remember the name?
Yeah, actually, I wound up working with her son. Later, many years later, he worked at the paper as well, and it was really at that stage as a freshman in high school, I just what am I going to do with my life? I was just going through all this angst, and really starting to stress over it when I was
Yeah.
hearing other kids talk about they were going to, they were already decided what they were going to do. And so I'd written, I think, an essay or something, for maybe for her class, and it was some kind of competition, and I got like second or third place. And she said, this is good. You should be a writer. And it was like, oh, thank goodness, that's it. Whatever, I'll do it. Sounds good to me.
And as they say, the rest is history.
Absolutely.
Well, how did you land here in Aiken?
Well, actually, that's an interesting story too, because I went off to University of Georgia after high school, and after that experience, I just wasn't sure if I really wanted to do it or not. So I just wound up going back to Walterboro and got on the paper that the little paper I used to sell. And I thought, well, I'll do this for a while, see how it goes.
Yeah.
And I stayed there for 30 years.
Oh.
I got really hooked on community journalism and really just kind of hooked on the community.
Yeah.
And how I got here is pretty interesting, because you think about networking. Well, this is one of the goofier networking stories. As the years passed, I had a lot of teacher friends, and one was at Walterboro High School, and then there was another who was teaching at a private school, and finally she decided to go over to the high school and started and she and the two teachers wound up collaborating on the school yearbook. And there was, and I started hanging out over there because I was friends with both teachers, and when I had some time, or I'd just sneak out of my office and go over there and hang out with them. And but there was a young guy, I think I first met him when he was a freshman. His name was Tim O'Brien, and
Our Tim, that's
Tim,
him.
that's right.
Wow.
And he was like 15 when I met him, and it was Tim, and there were maybe 3 other kids that I really got to know and become friends with. They were all the same age, and I just became this, I don't know, kind of the goofy uncle or something, and I went up spending a lot of time with them, and it was just a lot of fun to get to know them, and Tim just really got as he got on the yearbook staff and just really got into it, and he and another young man would also named Tim they'd go with me on assignments to, especially school stuff like band and football and things like that, and Tim just got into it, and he became the co-editor of the yearbook and went off to college and worked at a couple of papers, and then he wound up coming back to Walterboro, and left for a while, then came back, and basically when he was still in his 20s, he became my boss, which was really interesting. And as I like to say, it took me took years of therapy, and about 3 weeks ago, I got used to it.
Just about 3 weeks ago, huh?
So, but it was great. Yeah, that was a good working relationship, and he came over to Aiken as a managing editor in 2000, and the following year, he called and said he needed somebody to cover education.
Wow.
Would I do it? And I just said, do I really want to do this? And I said, oh, heck yeah, I want to do this.
Oh, yeah.
So,
oh, yeah.
Sure. So I did.
Well, what is it about education that keeps you engaged and wanting to get up every day to try to find the next story?
I really think the roots of that, and it's a little off track, but it really did make an impression. Now, when I came back to the paper in 1971, one of the first big stories I did, and back then I was like 22 and kind of
wet behind the ears.
Yeah, exactly, and didn't really just kind of ventured into something. And there was a group of young men called, they were the Alexian Brothers, and that's a Catholic men's order that most people aren't too familiar with, but it's really about they're nurses, and they had arrived in town on a federal grant, and they were providing some basic health care in a 3-county area. And so for a day or two, I just basically hung out with them in their aging van, and we would drive around the county. And it was really interesting because we went to a place. I lived in this town all my life, but it's a huge county, about the size of Aiken County, and we went up in an area called Red Root. And Red Root is a little off the beaten track. It's way off the beaten track, and basically they were there to provide health care, and just do some screening of people. And I didn't really have any expectation of this. We got to this little place in the middle of nowhere, and there were at least 150 to 175 people waiting on them.
Oh my goodness.
And they were just absolutely, these were people that, just didn't have access really to anything. And it really just kind of opened my eyes to, just a bigger picture there that I hadn't, a part of the community I hadn't seen before.
Yes.
And it wasn't just the healthcare. It was these are people who didn't have easy access to education and to jobs, and and they just needed the help. And it really just kind of, and it took a little while, but it really got me focused on just looking at those kinds of issues.
Sure.
And then over, over the next year or two, really just education really became something that I just found very compelling and worked on.
And you know what, Rob? There are very few professions that I've come in contact with that really allows you to have those type of experiences that opens your eyes to, I guess, the collective consciousness of our country, of our little town, of our what's going on. And so do you feel as a writer, when you are going and looking at the stories you're going to cover, is your responsibility to the business of selling papers, or is it more of you're trying to deliver a consciousness or helping people to form a consciousness that then helps, advance society? I think it's a difference these days.
Well, yeah, let's say
they're
they're mutual. I mean, certainly I hope that people will want to read them, and they're, and that's certainly part of the business. But the other part is just, and this evolved certainly over time, is that people only, I mean, everybody has an opinion on education, but a lot of that was gained during their own childhoods, or if they've had children.
That's true.
Or just word of mouth, and people talk about it and they have opinions about it. I think, pretty quickly, I guess I really got interested in the human condition of it, that there are people out there and there are kids, and this is it's a monumental task that people do, and it was one thing to be as a child, a student myself, but I can still remember. I mean, there were teachers, that were just enormous influences,
right?
And they were just great people. It's interesting that Tim and I are. Oh, he'll love me to mention this. We're 20 years apart. Oh, you never know. Is that much? Yeah.
You never
know.
know
Is that
it.
much difference? Yeah, I can say that. But we had the same. There was a legendary English teacher named Virginia Modley, and she started teaching in the early 40s. Taught my brother and my sister, both considerably older. I got her in mid-career, and Tim got her like her very last year after a 40-plus year career.
My goodness.
But she just had such, English teacher just had an amazing impact on thousands of students. And as I got into the business of being in the journal as a journalist, I mean, those memories started coming back.
Yes.
And there's one funny story back in the mid '80s. I'd gone on a trip to Israel with about 70 people from around the state, and when I got back, the English teacher that was Tim's teacher, Janice, was also a good friend. She invited me to come and speak to a education sorority. So so I walk in there, just thinking about it. This was going to be fun, and there were at least 7 or 8 of my former teachers in that room.
Oh my goodness!
And I just cracked up, and I said, "Oh my gosh, here I am, at the time in my mid-30s, and you're going to grade me on this, aren't you?" They just looked at me and said, "You better believe it," So.
That's right. There's something about teachers. No matter how old you are, when you see a former teacher, suddenly you're reverted back to that time when you were in that teacher's class. There's that level of respect and admiration, especially if they have made an impression on your life. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about public education from your perspective, because you have been in so many classrooms, board meetings, events throughout the years that I'm sure has helped you to develop a perspective on public education. Talk for a few moments about how back in the early years when there was segregation to now in a day and time when we are integrated and still facing some challenges, but the fundamental aspects of education and what it means is still there.
Let me put, I think I can put this in a perspective. Probably, I want to say the late 90s, there was a man in Charleston, living in Mount Pleasant outside of Charleston at the time, named Robert Washington. And he was a African American and had become very well known in that area for his artwork and his paintings on African American themes. And so I actually went over to Charleston. We met over there to do a feature story. And I knew his parents a little bit. I'd gotten to know them over the years, but I'd never met him. And it was really interesting as we sat down to talk that it turned, we grew up 5 blocks from each other.
My goodness.
We were a month apart in age, and we'd never met because he was going to one school and I was going to another. And that's, and that was pretty much the way things were. And, and as a child, I mean, I accepted it. We went through, the Freedom of Choice program in the mid 60s, and there were a small number of students that came over from the black high school, and Robert did not. But it was just interesting to talk to him and say, and I felt like I'd missed something, because we had, he's a great guy, and just fascinating. And but it's just the circumstances of that era. We're just that's just the way things were, and it's just tragic.
Do you believe that those type of experiences that helped, although we've made it through and we have progressed, do you believe that we're missing some of the appreciation of education and the struggle that some had to endure to just be in the classroom? That is causing some of the disconnect with our young people today and their lack of appreciation of education? Not having had some of those type of experiences?
I don't know. I think part of that is just that, I think, I guess there's, and we can certainly talk about this more too, later in the program, but there is, there is a disconnect in the sense that people don't, it's easy to get down on education. People just everybody's got an opinion.
Yes.
And I don't, and there's this perception, and I think we've probably talked about this before, that schools are in a vacuum, that it's the rest of society, the schools, and it's the school's absolute responsibility to work with its students. And it's just not going to happen. What has also failed us and what has changed so dramatically is just, certainly issues with families and but issues with poverty.
Yes. And
I don't think any of us could have anticipated that, just how, much of a struggle it would be in the 21st century. I mean, the 21st century was supposed to be like nirvana or something.
Yes.
Things were going to be better, and instead they've gotten, in many respects, they've gotten worse because you could work in a factory, as a high school graduate, or even as a dropout, and you could make some kind of living, and that has just gotten more and more elusive over the years, and I think that's put a lot of pressure on families.
Yes.
And I think that's what's happened for a lot of these kids.
Yeah, and I think it's also a very interesting dichotomy in that we have encouraged our young people to get as much education as they can, to get your high school diploma, go to college, and now today we have college educated people who are struggling to find employment. So it makes it a very difficult case for education and the promotion of it. Well, it's been enjoyable so far. I hope you are enjoying the discussion. We're just laid back today, enjoying our time with senior writer for the Aiken Standard, Mr. Rob Novitt. After a few words from our sponsors, we'll come back and Rob will share with us some of his memorable experiences with some photos as well. We'll be right back.
I lead a busy life, but I still have to make sure my family eats right. And everybody loves Dawn's Seasoning Delight. I use Dawn's on meats and vegetables. It's healthy, tastes great, and it's simple to use. It's like having a chef in a bottle.
My seasoning is available at Kroger, Buy Low, Food Line, Roots, and Harvest. Look for it on display in the meat department. Also visit seasoningdelight.com for information and recipes. Dawn's Seasoning Delight. It's so good.
Next time on Education Matters, we're going to summer camp. But it's not your typical summer camp. Here inside of Education Matters, I'll present a 7-week television series all geared to middle and high school students and their families. Education Matters has swag, and this summer I want you to go swagging with me. What does it stand for? S for spend, S for summer, W for watching, A, ASTV, G, gain, and N, knowledge with a lowercase k. That stands for Spend Summer Watching, ASTV, and Gain Knowledge. Lots of wonderful topics geared toward middle and high school students and moms and dads. You don't want to miss it. Starting in June. Next time with me, Donna Moore Westby on ASTV, Channel 95.
The Will Gray Opportunity School has been serving the beautiful Midlands of South Carolina since 1921. Our mission has evolved over the years, and we now specialize in helping young people move past their obstacles in order to achieve success. We give students opportunities to lead, to develop social skills, to become active in their communities, and to taste success. Don't settle for less than the absolute best for your life. Contact us today to take the next step in your journey toward success.
The Aiken Standard has served advertisers' needs in the CSRA for more than 100 years. In the new multimedia world, we offer a host of services with that same level of dedication to generating business for our clients. Everything from broadcast commercials, corporate events, and training videos, or even if you want your event streamed live across the world using our mobile, state-of-the-art production studio. Our staff has the skills and experience to take your project from concept to completion. Call us at 803-648-2311.
If you are interested in becoming an individual or corporate sponsor of Education Matters, contact Donna Moore Westby at 803-507-6793 or email at donnawesby@aol.com.
Welcome back inside of Education Matters. My name is Donna Moore Westby, your host, and today inside of the broadcast, we're spending a little time talking with senior writer, Mr. Rob Novitt, senior writer for the Aiken Standard, and he says he's been covering education stories for over 40 years. Oh my goodness. I am
Well,
42.
Keep in mind, there were, you know, in a small paper that I used to work for, it was, I mean, you did everything. You know,
Okay.
I wrote, you know, sports, you know, features, news, covered county council, delivered the paper, you know, just
Did it all.
Did it all.
It's helped you to become the wonderful writer you are. I've written articles. I've read articles. Writing, in my opinion, has somewhat become a lost art. I mean, I feel as if with technology and texting and computers, that nowadays it seems as if young people as well as adults don't really appreciate the wonderful communication tool that writing is.
That being said, I mean, it's been really interesting over the years to, you know, and certainly, you know, some of the teachers that really focus on writing in the school district, and you know, I'll see some of their work, you know, either, you know, just in, you know, see it through some way. Sometimes teachers will put their, you know, their students' work on the wall, and I'll get a chance to read them, or they're in competitions, and there's something really humbling about looking at the work of an 8th grader who can write Rings Abound Me.
That's what.
And It is absolutely true, and it's just been amazing to see some of the talent that really is in this community.
And there really is some exceptional talent. And unfortunately, though, from an employer's perspective, it almost seems as is an exception, not just here in our area, but in this country. It almost seems as if it's an exception to the rule versus the rule, that our young people truly know how to write and can communicate in such a fascinating way. How, as a journalist, do you see it as a disappearing creative way that children really understand the value of writing?
It may be a cliche that how much that I think this has been a long-standing problem, so we can't blame it totally on the modern technical gadgets, but. It's hard to say why that is. It may have been always the case, but maybe it's just we're seeing, maybe being more aware of it now.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I wanted to personally ask you about, of course, Rob covers the school board meetings for Aiken County Public Schools, and very recently we have been discussing our budget in Aiken County, and I must say that with this particular board of individuals that I serve with, we truly care about student achievement, and that is always at the forefront of our every discussion. But you made a comment after one of our meetings, and it stuck with me because you've never editorialized, or you rarely do you editorialize at a meeting, at a function. You seem to be focused on the facts and getting the story the best and most accurate way. But you came up to us and you said that was some of the most interesting conversation you had heard at a school board meeting. Why was that?
Yeah, I've been here almost 11 years. I don't know how many meetings I've been to. I think I've missed 4, maybe, or 5.
Oh my goodness, that's better than some board members. Not this current board.
Not at all, of course not. But it really just struck me about that particular conversation because, I mean, as you recall, it was a discussion about, the board, members weighing about whether to raise taxes or not. And and y'all had these discussions before, and before many of you got on the board. The previous boards had those discussions too, but this was the first time I saw. I mean, it has to be a clinical process generally, but this time I think a lot of that just kind of it really became an important personal issue for you guys about the obligations to the taxpayers, but also the students and the faculty and administration. Right. And I think, and it was not a question of anybody being wrong, but it was just heartfelt, and everybody was really genuinely concerned about that. And I wish that a lot of people could have seen it.
Yes.
Because I think it just, I mean, they only know y'all from just throughout the community or what they read in the paper, maybe a TV broadcast or something like that. And it was very, very compelling to hear that conversation.
Well, I'm very happy to hear you say that because we do know most people don't get the opportunity or take the opportunity to come to the school board meetings. And that's why, as a writer, it makes, in my opinion, your job that much more important and that much more critical to how the public then sees what we're doing and how we're doing it. So that partnership has to be pretty strong.
And that was, and there are facts and there are facts, but there's also, nuances. I mean, it's also just what is going on, with the people that have been elected to have this, pretty scary, responsibility.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And sometimes when we're talking about the education of our children, we have over 24,000 children in Aiken County that we're having to think about constantly. Will we always make the right decisions? No, because we're human beings, but I guarantee you that most people who are involved in public education and even in private education in some way really have the best interests of the children at heart, because we all know that education is the key to opportunity. It definitely opens the door to opportunity. And you've covered several such events over the years for us here in Aiken County and all over the central Savannah River area. What's a typical day like for you, Rob?
Oh,
What time do you wake up?
I wake up way too early. Actually, it's just stories happen. It's and one story leads to another story. And this morning I was over at Millbrook, elementary school. They had a little five-year-old kindergarten graduation. So I didn't.
Oh, I love things like that.
So I didn't have. I had another appointment, so I didn't have much time. So I just went in there and started taking pictures. But there was this. There were these two little boys that were just sitting next to each other, and and one clearly had some physical disabilities, and the other one was but he was just grinning from ear to ear. They both were, and they were just big buddies. And it turns out they're both in the same class, and one is autistic, and although you never know it, and the other boy just has those physical problems. But I'm going to run back over there tomorrow and just and just talk, and just do a little feature story.
Speaking of pictures, and I hate to use another cliche, but sometimes it is so appropriate that a picture is worth 1,000 words. For you, as a journalist, and certainly one who's been on the job for so long, it seems as if you recognize not only the value of the written words, but also the photos that then accompany those stories. What are you looking for when you're taking those photos?
Just something that's human. It's that mentality of that. I'm not a professional photographer by trade. I mean, I've taken pictures, throughout my career, but sometimes you have to get lucky and just keep shooting and hopefully something will turn out. But
speaking of that, we actually have a couple of photos. Now this is one of my favorites. When you talk about a picture is worth 1,000 words, this was at Millbrook, and I actually happen to know the black boy in the middle, and the expressions on his face all the time. You know what he is feeling. What was going through your mind when you saw these children?
Oh, I just loved it. Because and this is a cliche too, but do I live for those moments? Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And I have been known to get something, get an occasional picture that I needed some picture to get. And when I've gotten it, I've been known to suddenly revert to about that age and jump around, screaming, "Yes, I got it!" But this was actually. Sean Poppy, who's from the Savannah River Ecology Lab, was there, and he makes these visits all throughout the district, and he was there and I don't know which critter they were showing at that particular moment. It might have been one of the bigger alligators or something, but obviously they just went nuts.
Well, you know what? You can tell that it's children, because if it were adults and they pulled out a snake, you would see the back of us running away, not with excitement and jubilation. Let's continue with some of the photos because, again, in addition to your wonderful writing, you've taken some excellent photos to share. What public education is?
This is the same event, and these were, and you can't, there's that, and it's really, I'm glad to see you don't hear about it as much, that, you got to just pound, somebody pounding their fist and saying reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Yeah.
But there's also, school is also about experiences.
Yes, it is.
And bringing these kinds of experiences to them. So these kids are getting to hold these, baby gators, and they're just having a ball with it. It's just great.
Another thing is you've covered several of our teacher trainings and and other activities within the district. Tell us about this.
This was actually a student run event.
The bullying. The Girls Against Bullying.
That's right.
Yeah.
These were. This was at Aiken High in the last 2 or 3 years, and actually I did a story in about, I want to say, Will Victor, who is a student at Aiken High. His older sister Liz actually started Girls Against Bullying, wrote it, and with the help of the PE teacher, actually got a grant to start that program. And if people aren't familiar with it, it's basically these students, and there was Aiken High, but also later from South Aiken as well, and they would go around to to maybe fifth grade, but also middle schools, and talking about how kids can also recognize bullying, but also be aware that not only they may be, if they're victims of it, how to deal with it, and they could also, but also just to do it, and also how to see if they themselves are perpetuating Girls Against Bullying.
Yes, exactly.
And so these kids were wonderful. I mean, just what they were doing. It's a community project.
Yes, it is. And Rob, over the years, and I took it upon myself to look back at the number of articles you've written dealing specifically with the bond referendum, because I don't think people truly understand the animal that communication can be. It is very complex, as you and I discussed before the broadcast. You can think you're conveying the message you want to convey, but the receiver, the key part is making sure the receiver receives the message that you are hoping they will receive. What is your goal with every story you write, or with the stories you write in general?
It's just to kind of make it accessible, and that's not. And I've thought about this in recent years. And what makes that a challenge is that education has gotten so complex, and I think the things that y'all have to wade through in terms of instructional issues and something like and a bond issue is a very complicated process.
Yes, it is.
And it's hard to really explain why that's necessary.
I think I lost count. I think I counted since the very beginning discussions of bond referendum and facility study in Aiken County. This was even before I was elected to the board. Over 100 different articles about bond referendum and facilities, studies, and all that kind of good stuff. But there were still individuals who will proclaim that we're not being transparent enough, and that no one told me, I didn't know. As a journalist, I'll pose the question to you. What can we do about that?
God, I wish there was some simple answer to that. I mean, and y'all have talked about this in meetings, and y'all got this communication committee that you're trying to look at those issues. Is basically just trying to, you have to find a way to engage the public, and really, I mean, because I know some of you were frustrated, and certainly it's not necessarily a one way or the other on the bond issue. There were certainly reasons to vote for it, and there were some other reasons to vote against it. And but I think it was discouraging for several board members that people would, again, after it was over, just saying, gee, I just hadn't heard anything about it. I didn't know what was going on, so I didn't either. I didn't vote, or I just voted against it.
You certainly have seen a lot of changes over the years, and right now in our state, in the state of South Carolina, we have individuals who are very pro school choice. And one of the concerns I have is that because of the complexity of communication and people who are not engaged, that using the words school choice on the surface does seem like it's the right thing to do. But could it possibly be that with the lack of understanding of where public education has come, where we are right now, and where those who are in favor of school choice in terms of vouchers, and tuition tax credits and all of that, do you think that somehow we will, our state and possibly country, if it passes, will move public education in a direction that maybe it shouldn't go because people weren't engaged?
Yeah, you're going to put me in my soapbox here. I think I have a real concern about that, and that's. it's just I've just lived with this for for many years, and it really troubles me to see, because what's being proposed, it's in the General Assembly now, is it sounds fairly innocuous, but there are people behind this effort, and I think it's pretty well documented. They don't live in South Carolina, and they just targeted South Carolina as a place where they would like to pursue this ideology of and really of kind of undercutting public education, and so they make these promises that that this was really about poor kids and giving them options, when it's just not going to happen. I mean, and I don't have the primary beneficiaries of any kind of whatever terminology you use, whether it's a voucher or tuition tax credit or tax deductions, it's really going to benefit the people who already have their kids in private school.
Yes.
And you can tell parents that if you're poor, you're not happy with your school, well, we can get you in a private school. But and the private schools are private by choice. They don't have to take the students, and they don't necessarily want to. That's not their to pretend it's their mission is either being naive or deliberately misleading.
Yes, I'm proud of you for voicing your thoughts on that, because quite honestly, many people are confused about the issue, and those who stand the chances of being most affected are not engaged, and that is my concern. So I appreciate your thoughts on that. Obviously, over the years, there have been some stories where you've had your own personal opinion or thought about the subject matter. Is it difficult as a writer to report the facts without including your own thoughts or opinion?
Let's just say that over the years, and my former newspaper I work for, and certainly here, I get assailed on both sides a lot of times. So I feel like that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So.
Welcome to the club, because I tell you what, no matter how good your intentions are, it seems you will never be able to please everyone. And that's why I really don't even try. For me as an individual, in everything I do, I pray and I seek for divine guidance and direction, and I try to give it the best I can, and come what may. But I'm going to be able to sleep at night knowing that I've made a decision that I can stand by, that I have convictions behind, and that's the best I feel like I can do. As a writer, do you see your responsibility as a writer one of the most important jobs there are, because in a sense you are helping to present the facts or sway public opinion, particularly when people may not be engaged in a process?
Yeah, not so much this time. I've had an experience in the past with a referendum in Walterboro back in the late 70s. Actually, the same time, I think Aiken was passing one that wound up building Silver Bluff and South Aiken and Midland Valley high schools. And I felt at that time this was such a monumental opportunity for the that I had to be an advocate, and that was my job. And that because we had a high school that was at the time over 50 years old, but in just totally could no longer support a high school. And in fact, it was very similar to what was here. It was only 11th and 12th grade. And we needed a school that would be 9 through 12 again. So it just, things fortuitously, they had a classroom ceiling collapsed about a month before the referendum, which was helpful. But I just tried to present it as it was, and that basically the high school was going, if this wasn't done, the State Department had already said they would shut down the school, and we would be stuck with somebody else's plan to build a new school.
It's a shame.
So it was going to
come
happen.
To that.
It was going to happen. So it passed by 30 votes out of 8,000. So.
My goodness gracious! Well, isn't
that was
something?
pretty amazing.
How do you determine what stories to write?
Oh, it's just Yeah.
It just happens.
It just happens. It can be, sometimes they get assigned, and certainly just others, just people call, or I just wander around the school, a school, and there's, and just see what's going on. So I have, there's a lot of free reign in that.
There is a lot of free reign, and let's take a look at some more photos of Rob's experiences over the years covering public education.
This is this was I think last year's or year before, the Summer Writing Institute, writing the Aiken Writing Project, and I'll be going back to that this summer. And this is where teachers go, from can come in and get graduate credit, but they're just learning writing processes they can bring back to not only their classes, but the other teachers in their schools.
That's
and
awesome.
It's a great program.
That's awesome. I want to flip to some of the that's a part of the leadership
This was
at Gravette.
Yeah, this was Leadership Aiken County, and their project a couple of years ago was to basically take some kids, maybe from places like Children's Place, and some other agencies, and take them out camping for an overnight stay, and who had never had any kind of experience like that, and just to see the interaction between the kids and the adults was just fantastic.
And another fantastic event that we were able to share together is this year's announcement of the Teacher of the Year. James, let's cut to the Teacher of the Year. I think that photo right there, it touches every emotion within me. That's our Aiken County Teacher of the Year
and her mother
for the 2012, and hopefully we'll have her on the show.
I've been meaning to get to see her, and I've got to do that
I cannot.
tomorrow.
Her name is
Lisa Rayford,
and
she is
and
absolutely,
her mother.
and she's wonderful. I mean, she is just
one of our special education
absolutely.
teachers
She's
at
just,
the Center for Innovative Learning, which is another new thing we've done here in Aiken County. As we're about to approach the end of another academic year, I want to cut to the adult education photo, because to me, this is the quintessence of public education. Success stories of individuals who had dropped out of school but can now enjoy success.
I don't think people really understand that. I mean, we've got about 24,000 students in pre-K through grade 12, but we've got hundreds and hundreds more that are enrolled in adult ed, either in the diploma or GED track, and just. As and you were there last night, for last night's program, and it was just, it's always moving. But I guess, I don't know, maybe as I get older, I get more emotional about things. But just to hear some of those stories and talk to some people afterwards, the mother and daughter mother and son that got graduated together, the young woman that just had so many regrets about not finishing high school, 7 or 8 years ago, and just to see those tears of utter joy and just being, she was just beside herself.
That's right. My last question for you, Rob. If you had to write your own headline for the story of your life, what would it be?
Oh, good gosh. I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Or your journey for public education.
Yeah, or just, not that. It'd have to be funny. I couldn't, I can't take that. I can't take that stuff too seriously.
Not that seriously, huh?
No.
Well, Rob, it has been awesome. I thank you so much for
pleasure.
taking time with me
always
today. You are a walking book, so maybe one day you'll capture some of those experiences in a book that we can all enjoy. So thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. Certainly I have. We're very proud of Rob and thankful for all he's doing for public education right here in the CSRA. My name is Donna Moore Westby, your host of Education Matters, where we're connecting you to the world of education one step at a time. Have a great day.
If you are interested in becoming an individual or corporate sponsor of Education Matters, contact Donna Moore Wesby at 803-507-6793 or email at donnawesby@aol.com.